good afternoon, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the SCORE Professional Women's Networking event. And today we will be featuring Kristal Murin, the president of Bossy Girl Leadership, who's going to be helping you to redefine what bossy is and how to make sure that you'll never play, that word in a small vein again. But so just a little bit to get started. I have with me, SCORE is sponsoring this event. I have with me my cohorts in crime, Linda Toth, who is a mentor, Andy Green, Kathleen Kennedy, are all part of SCORE. Linda and I are from the Lancaster chapter, and Andy and Kim are from the Susquehanna chapter. And they are really the host today, and they are the ones who were gracious enough to share Kristal with us, because Kristal at one point was mentored by Andy. And so just to give you a little background about the Professional Women's Networking with SCORE, we are a nonprofit organization that is made up of retired business people who have vast experience and mentor folks in the community that would like to start their own business. And Kristal is such a great example of that. And also, I have to say, she's really just the perfect example of somebody who has been very successful and is now paying it forward and paying it back. So Kristal, we're delighted to have you here today. So Kristal brings with her over 2 decades of proven experience in building leadership. And I think this is especially important in a women's role. And I'm about to tell you some of her customers, which I think speaks volumes about her skills in teaching leadership, especially from a woman's perspective. She's helped provide leadership and development programs through her consulting services across the Mid-Atlantic, with such customers as the Disney Channel, the U.S. Department of VA. You talk about in tough environment. In my prior life, they were one of our customers. Not an easy feat, Kristal, so I can appreciate. Maryland Department of Human Services, Planet Fitness, Pennsylvania Department of Human Services again. And so she's done various speaking engagements with various universities, healthcare university, nonprofits, and governments. So Kristal, without further ado, I want to make sure we have plenty of time for you. Take it away, girl.
Fantastic. Thank you all so much. I'm so excited to be here. Now, I do have a quick question just to throw at either Andy or Kim. I see we have 17 participants, but I can't see them. Is there a way that I can see our people?
I don't think in this format that we can, unless we make them all co-host. Now, if you want me to do that, I can start going through the list and do that.
I think we need to do that because that's the only way that I can interact with them.
Okay, Kim, you'll have to do that because you're the designated host.
I'm promoting everybody right now.
Everybody's frozen. Am I frozen?
No, you're not.
Hello? Oh no.
That's okay, be patient.
Oh no, what is happening?
Oh, there you are. You're good. I just saw you move. You're moving. You're moving. Kristal, you're on mute.
Did I freeze?
Yeah, but now you're good to go, girl.
Oh my goodness, that was craziness. I thought, wow, we are really in trouble here. Here we go. Oh, and I can see people now. This is a much better situation. Awesome.
Great. Kim is promoting everybody up.
Awesome. As you're doing that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And we put this on. Good. Thank you, Kim, for doing that. I really, really appreciate it. I am really excited to be here with all of you. As we get started, I just want to do a little bit of housekeeping. So what we're looking at today is we are going to be doing a very interactive session that will open up a conversation for all of us, specifically about what it looks like to overcome adversity in business with a focus on women. And that doesn't mean as a man, you can't be a part of this conversation, because what is most important as we move forward, if we want to support overcoming adversity, we have to build understanding and create allies amongst ourselves. So I am really excited to see men and women in the room as we get started having this conversation. What I do want to tell you is I will fully expect, I will fully expect everyone to get actively involved in the chat. And I will be monitoring that as we move forward. If there is any question that I'm asking and I'm asking you to participate, there are two ways you can participate. You can unmute and you can talk to me. That doesn't throw me off in any way, shape, or form. I actually encourage you to do that if you're comfortable. If you are at work or in some place where that's not possible for you, I would ask you to just go ahead and put your answers in the chat box, and I will be watching that as well. So, one thing we have to address before we move forward, because we are going to be talking about not exactly a whole lot of bossy stuff today, but the first thing that you see when you log into this session, and probably when you registered for this session, if you have not heard of me before, you saw this word bossy. And what I'd like to do is ask you all, what does that mean to you? What does the word bossy mean to you? And if it's possible for you all, if you would turn your cameras on so I can see you, that would be great. If that's not possible, that's okay. But what I want to know is, what does bossy mean to you? And you can put it in the chat box or you can talk to me. Either one is fine. And know that after 5 years of being the bossy girl, there's literally nothing you could say to answer this question that would be offensive to me. What does bossy mean to you?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Sorry, I was flip-flopped on mute and unmute. I'll jump in.
Talk to me.
Somebody who takes charge.
Good. Somebody who takes charge. Yes. What else?
Someone that's very confident in what she's doing or they're doing.
Thank you, Lisa. Somebody that's very confident. We got bossy equals direct, a negative connotation, a non-leader, Suzanne says. Awesome. Ruth Ann says ordering people around. Good. What else?
Dominant.
Dominant. I love that. Yes. What else? Thank you, Jim. Give me
Someone
one
who
more.
doesn't listen, just wants to speak.
Someone who doesn't listen, just wants to speak. And what, oh, we got some more. Good. Assertive, overbearing. To me, in the context of leadership that I heard in my career, it is a negative connotation for women leaders if they were aggressive, which is wrong. That's awesome. Thank you, John. What's really interesting about this is I have moved forward in business, and we're going to talk a little bit about my story as we spend some time here together. But what I have learned is the word bossy does have some really negative connotations. Everything you all said is exactly on point. When we're using the word bossy, oftentimes we're talking about a person who can be a bit overbearing, maybe. And unfortunately, the word is used about somebody who is willing to achieve their own goals on the back of somebody else, push somebody else down for their own win. That's the kind of thing that we're talking about when we hear the word bossy. But what's interesting is from the time I was a very young girl, I heard the word bossy, and people oftentimes described me as bossy. And I had to take a look inside. And as I grew and shaped what I believed that I was and who I was, I had to take some interesting looks at that word, because oftentimes this word would be something that shut me down or made me not use my voice. And as I walked forward in purpose and in courage, I realized that oftentimes the word bossy isn't actually used for somebody who's hurting someone else or somebody who's actually overbearing. It's oftentimes used for a woman who's willing to use her voice and is leading and has a mission. When you really look at it, when you look at how the word bossy is used, you know, if we have men who are leading and are on a mission and are using their voice, we call them leaders. But when you're female, we call that bossy. And over time, I saw that evolving. And so I am on a mission to redefine the word bossy for not only my girls, but for all women who are out there using their voice with courageous love and action. We'll talk about that a little bit more as we move forward, but I just wanted to address this with you and talk about the elephant in the room. The other thing I want to say is Jeannie was so on point when she shared with you the role that SCORE has played in my life. 5 years ago, lost, falling apart, and really, really confused about where I was going in life, I ended up calling SCORE. And I was put in touch with Andy Green, who's here under the name Susquehanna SCORE right now. And for 5 years, and to this day, I promise you, Andy still gets emergency phone calls from me like, Andy, help, this is happening. What do I do now? I cannot say enough positive things about SCORE, but what I can tell you is that I went from a place 5 years ago of not being able to read and write to now today being a 2-time best-selling author, on my way to a TED Talk, and speaking at some of the most, to me, most unbelievable events across the nation, and becoming a household name in redefining Bossy. And all of that is really because of SCORE and because Andy and people like Andy believed that that was possible for me. Yeah. So I can't say enough. Please, please, please keep being involved in supporting SCORE. And so now what I'd like you all to do is take out a piece of paper and a pen. And I'd like you to draw this chart. And as you can see, I have the directions on the screen. This isn't that hard. I'm going to give you about 1.5 minutes to do this work. And what I'd like you to do is this doesn't have to be this fancy. You just make a T basically on a piece of paper. And on the left side, I'd like you to write at least 3 leaders that you would be willing to follow. And when I talk about being willing to follow, let me be really clear about what that means. I'm not talking about somebody who has power over you and can make you submit to their will. That's power. That's not leadership. When I talk to you about a leader that you would want to follow, I'm talking about that person that you would be willing to walk across hot coals for. I'm talking about that person that when they said jump, you would say how high, and you would ask why later. That's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about a leader you want to follow. Write at least 3 names on the left-hand side. And then on the right-hand side, I'd like you to write at least 1 or 2 adjectives for how you would describe them. And I'll let you think on that for just a moment. Also,
Question.
please know, they can be alive or they can be past leaders. That is completely okay, as long as it's somebody that you would walk across hot coals for at some point in time. Thank you for the question, John. Absolutely.
So it's a different project, it's not a mixed project. It's a different project.
So the problem with that project was that he wanted to design the house. And the way, so right now there's.
Just know it's totally okay with me, but if your microphone is not muted, we will be able to hear your conversation. I just like to let you guys know that before you say something that you wouldn't love everyone to hear.
We designed it on the software and then the block into our mail and then they sent that information to us.
All right, now I'm going to pause you all for one moment.
So that's.
And I'm going to ask you to look at your list and just put a very slight cross mark through any leader that is not a woman. Jeannie, I love your face. Ah! And I'm going to ask you to be really candid with me. I know that this is going to be a difficult conversation to have.
Your lower first one, my first one.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I'm reading my chat box. Okay. What I'd like you to do now is have this conversation with me. How many people are left? How many did you cross out? Do you have any left?
Oh,
Talk to me. Somebody share.
Honestly, I did not have a woman.
Who said that? I can't see.
Kim, it's Kim.
Kim, awesome. You did not have a woman.
Now,
Okay.
when you mentioned a woman, then I did think of someone and I put down Condoleezza Rice.
Beautiful.
that's a good one.
Good. Okay. Thank you for sharing that, Kim. It's not easy to be the first one to do that. So I honor you in that. That's hard. Who else? Somebody else talk to me right now about how you're feeling or what you're thinking.
I had two.
John, did you say that?
Yes.
Talk to me.
My mom.
Okay.
She was an entrepreneur when in the 40s. She started her own business, and when women starting their own business. So I don't know what she did and how she did it, but she was always a strong woman. And then, believe it or not, when I was younger and I always worked in the defense industry. Rear Admiral Grace Hopper, and I still, she was one of the first admirals in the Navy for women admirals. And she had a quote that I still use today. She says, "You don't manage people, you lead people." And I remember that. But you got to remember too, I had 4 sisters and no brothers, so I had the right upbringing.
I love it. We'll get along just fine. We'll get along just fine. Good. Thank you, John. That's beautiful. And it's so true. You manage things. You lead people. There's no question about it. That's awesome. Good. Thank you. Who else? Talk to me.
All my fingers, everything is. So it's notorious.
So, Kristal, I'll just go quickly because.
Awesome, Jeannie. I'd love it.
Okay, so I only came up with 2 people. One
Okay.
was male, one was female.
Okay.
But when I looked at the characteristics, the traits, they were the same.
Let's talk about this for a minute. First of all, I'm going to say to all of you, we're going to have a discussion about why might the first people that we put on this list oftentimes be male.
Yeah.
We're going to have that discussion. And I will tell you, oftentimes the women that are on this list are oftentimes super deep, personal, nurturing connections. They're not always family, but oftentimes they are if there are women that are on this list. And I've done this quite a few times, probably at least 100 with groups like yours. And there are always trends here. And that's why I started asking these kinds of questions to people like you, because it's just an interesting thing to think about. How, and I will tell you, the first time that I filled this chart out, almost everyone but one, I put 5 leaders on this list, and all of them but one were male. And I think there's some interesting reasons for that, but we'll talk about that in a bit. What I want to do now is, regardless of gender, Talk to me about the adjectives that you listed on the right side of the chart. You can put them in the chat box, or you can say them to me out loud. Vision, beautiful, good, Suzanne. Inclusive, decisive, good, Brenda. Integrity, yes, mine were the same. Intelligence and humility. Humility is actually listed as the #1 leadership trait in any survey that typically people do across the board. That's awesome. Let's see here. Intelligent, I'm losing it. Here we go. Intelligent, hardworking, wise, helpful, willing to share, humble, strong, character, takes good care of people who report to them, forward thinking. This is amazing. What do these words that you've heard so far have in common? If you could characterize them or put them into categories, how would you do that? Compassionate, enthusiastic, persistent, good. What else? Keep sharing them and then start putting them in groups for me. What do these words have in common? Technical skill component and an emotional component. Good. Balancing that, Linda, is really interesting, isn't it? Good. They put others first. Good, Jim. They are character value words, not behavior. Isn't that interesting, Suzanne? Because when we look at, and it's so fascinating, oftentimes people believe they have to go and learn how to be a leader. And there are skills we need to learn. I've spent a lot of time, one of the greatest things that Andy and I have fun doing is sorting out behavior and putting it in boxes and trying to understand how to meet other people where they are. And that is a skill. It's something that you have to learn. But for the most part, when you look at this, and Suzanne, you're spot on. Do you have to go to school to learn how to put other people first? Do you have to go to school to learn how to be compassionate or enthusiastic or persistent? Do you have to go to school to learn how to be forward thinking or take good care of the people that you love or be strong or have character? What's so interesting to me, and I think that Webster and I would probably have a knockdown drag out, I got to be honest. But if you look up leadership in the dictionary, it says that leader is a skill, and then it will basically have some sort of definition that explains that leadership is a skill that allows you to support people in getting things done. And it can be any number of ways to say that. And what I would say to you is it really? Is leadership really a skill? Or look at these people that you would walk across hot coals for. That's leadership. If you would do something for someone that you typically wouldn't do for yourself, that's leadership. These are people you would follow. And I would say that the things that you wrote in this box and that you've said to me, they're not skills, they're choices. We all have choices to make. And as we move forward in this discussion and really in business and in life, we're talking about overcoming adversity, but we're talking about making choices. And as we do that, I think it's really important to understand that if you are moving forward, well, let me ask you this way first. Raise your hand or put a 1 in the chat box if you identify with the words overcoming adversity. Put a 1 or raise your hand. Jim, I saw you. That's awesome. If you identify with this, I want you to raise your hand or put a 1 in the chat box. Either one. I think I saw. Yes. Good, John. I see your hand. Lori, I see you. Suzanne, I see you. Linda, I see you. Good. Okay. First of all, if you identify with these words, I want to give you a big round of applause. And let me tell you why. Because if you feel like you can relate to overcoming adversity, that means that you're in the ring, that you're fighting the good fight, that you're going after the mission, and that you've fallen down, that you possibly have dirt on your face, and that you have seen hopelessness at times, that you have felt like there was no way out. And if that's the case, that means that you have toyed with these choices or have made these choices of having, and you guys have listed all of these things up here. You've had to make the choices of persistence. You've had to make the choices of being willing to put others first when you feel like there's nothing left for you. And what I want to do is share a little bit about my story with you. If you can't tell, that's me. And what I'd like you to do is come off mute or feel free to write in the chat box. When you look at this picture, what do you see?
Some kind of electrical leads that surround your head.
Good. Electrical leads that surround my head. Absolutely. Yes, you're right. What else do you see?
You look great.
Well, I will tell you, I've gained 30 pounds since that. So we need to get back on point here. But yes, thank you. I've gained 30 pounds in 5 years. So, you know, I looked better then, but I wasn't doing real well. I'll be honest. I'm doing a lot better now.
Well, you would not know that from that picture, Kristal.
Thank you. Thank you.
I see determination in your eyes.
Determination in my eyes. Awesome. Yes. Someone who has been hurt. Health issues is the interference. Good. What else do you see? Sadness. Suzanne, you're right. Good. What else?
I see kind of like a little defiance in there, Kristal.
I love that. I love that. And you know what's funny? So I'm trying to decide if I want to put Andy on the spot and let him speak to what he sees in this picture first. Because I think it might be very, very meaningful for all of you, especially because many of you are SCORE mentors. So if Andy is, there's a little apprehension on the future, candor. Yes, good. I think I'm going to let Andy speak to this moment a little bit. I'm going to tell you just to let him gather his thoughts. What you're seeing in this picture is this was 5 years ago on November 16th. So what had happened is I was driving to work one day and I was stopped at a red light on 15 near Dillsburg, Pennsylvania. Driving to work just like any other day. It was 9 o'clock in the morning and I was hit from behind by a truck at 55 miles per hour. What happened is my car was totaled, but what I didn't know at the time was really so was my brain. What's interesting is when you're in a car accident, if you break your back, people know how to fix it. Doctors know how to fix it. If you break your brain, there's no real solution. And it's funny, until you're in that spot, you think modern medicine can fix anything. Then you're in that spot and you realize there's nothing there for you. At this time, when you see me in this picture, I was a single mom of a 9-year-old little girl. I could no longer read and write. I was having seizures. I was regularly going unconscious while I was walking my dog. I couldn't remember my dog's name. I knew that you sit on this thing, but I didn't know that it was called a chair. And I had to find a way to continue to pay my mortgage, to pay for food. I ended up becoming a part of the system. And what you're seeing here is, and I don't know if you guys can tell, but that black thing that's coming out of the back of my head is, there's a zipper on it. And there
Yeah.
were over 60 leads that were stuck in my hair. And I had to wear these everywhere I went with this big, huge pack that would hang on my side because they were monitoring my brain activities and my seizures.
Mm.
So, and where I was I had gotten a ride that somebody was going to take me and drop me off. I had to go in and get my daughter from summer camp, but I didn't want her to know I was sick. So I was trying to hide this. And what you don't know is right after I took this picture, I wrapped a scarf around my head and I tried to tuck all of my leads into a sweatshirt with a hood, and it was 90 degrees outside. And that's what I had taken this picture to send it to my mom so that she would know what it was I was trying to hide. Now, what I did in this moment is I had no idea what I was going to do next because I could no longer punch a clock. I had worked for the Commonwealth for many years and I was the training officer of the Department of Public Welfare. I had 16,000 employees and I was the person who wrote the Leadership Development Institute for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania that's now used across all of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and the Maryland state government. And now here I am, a part of the system, unable to even read and write. And I could no longer maintain a normal 40-hour-a-week schedule. And I was at a complete loss. And what did I do? I called Andy. And Andy, would you like to take a minute or two and just speak to what that moment looked like for you?
No, I'd be glad to. I met Kristal probably maybe 2 months after this photo, somewhere in there. And she had a score appointment. She didn't know me, I didn't know her. In this little office where we were meeting, and she got there first. She was in a chair waiting when I got there. And so I kind of walked in, was taking my coat off, we said hello and all that. And what I saw sitting in this chair was this kind of, I don't know, beat down person, a person who looked like life had been hard on her. And she wasn't real talkative at the time. So, we just started, just introducing and, and what do you want to accomplish, going forward? She said, I want to be a leadership trainer or something like that, and here's this person that's really seemed like a very shy person, very quiet, did not display a lot of dynamics. So, we just started talking and, she explained her story about, she was having a hard time remembering. If she had to talk to a group, she couldn't remember what she was going to talk about. And so the first several meetings that we had, we just kicked around ideas of having, just cards with information on them, starting slow. And it was a very, very long, slow process because obviously, she was doctoring at the time, several different doctors, physical, psychological, all of that going on. And so when we met, we just kind of watch her evolve. And it took a lot of months to where there started to get more continuity. But the thing that, and I said to her a couple of times along the way, is there was something about her that told me she was going to be successful. I can't tell you what that was. It was there. And I get emotional when I talk about it. But I mean, we've put out in the open. We're pretty open with one another about everything.
Yes.
It's that kind of relationship that we've developed over these years. But it's almost like like a dad would look. I watched her evolve from that moment to the woman you see here today. And we've been talking every step of the way and argued, debated,
Yes.
Disagreed, all those things. And, but to the betterment of both of us, I've learned a lot working with her. And I hopefully, she's learned a lot, working with me, because we come from very different perspectives on almost everything.
Yes.
And, but it's been a positive. So, it's just, I watched her today and it's like, wow, I am so proud of her. Okay, now
Well,
let me off the hook, please.
you're off the hook, Andy. So now, and let me just tell you, if you all have the opportunity to make a difference in somebody's world, the way that Andy has made a difference in mine, I am so grateful for you. And I can tell you that what you're doing and the work that you do every day makes a difference. And if you're a SCORE client, don't ever stop being that SCORE client. There's so much to be gained. I can't say enough wonderful things, but let me tell you a little bit about the story from that point forward. After I had this conversation with Andy and realized that I really, even in the meeting with him, I wasn't able to voice who I was, where I came from, but I could feel that he believed in me enough to wait. And what I need you all to know is, if you haven't ever hit rock bottom, I'm so happy that that's the case for you. If you have, I want you to know that I'm so proud of you that you're here today to talk about it. But what I also want you to know is that if you're in the ring and you're fighting for what's right, and you're fighting for purpose, and you're using your courage to make a difference, you're going to get knocked down again. And there's two things that I've learned in the depths of hell that will keep you moving forward. Because let me tell you, you don't stop in hell. You can't stop there. And there wasn't a single person 5 years ago that wouldn't have been understanding if I said, you know what, I'm just going to stay in my PJs and stay in the dark room, where the only thing I was allowed to do really when I met Andy was I was allowed to color. No screens, no television, no lights, no books, no music. I wasn't allowed to think. Imagine what that's like. And if I had just decided, you know what, I'm going to stay in my PJs, I give up. There's nobody that would have faulted me for that. Let's be honest. But I had a 9-year-old little girl to live for, and I had a purpose. There's two things that take you out of that place of hell, that you get the opportunity, and it's an opportunity. Please make no mistake about it, that you get to fight again. And those things are courage and purpose. And those are the things that keep us moving forward. For me, with courage and purpose, I kept going to those doctor's appointments. And one thing I want to share with you, as I share with you my story, is I walked into my doctor's office, and my doctor came in with me papers like this, and he was holding them, and he was excited. He was like, oh, I have great news for you, Kristal. And I was like, you do? That's amazing. Tell me what's great. And he holds these papers up to me, and he says, Kristal, you're in the 30th percentile of your cognitive functioning. This is amazing. This is great. You're all done. You don't need any more rehabilitation. You're going to be fine. And I looked at him and I said, excuse me? Because understand that with brain injury, you don't always lose your intellect. I didn't lose my intellect. I lost my coping mechanisms for memory. I lost my ability to focus on something long enough to be able to store it in my brain, but I didn't lose my intellect. And I looked at him and I said, excuse me? And he said, you're in the 30th percentile. We can stop your rehabilitation. You're going to be fine. And I looked at him and I said, that's really interesting. And I had tears rolling down my face. And I said to him, if this was your son, if this was your daughter sitting here in this room, would the 30th percentile be good enough for them? And he looked at me and I said to him, how dare you? How dare you ever think that you can tell me what I can and can't do? How dare you put me in a box of being good enough at that level? Who do you think you are? And do you know what he said to me? He looked at me and he said, well, aren't you bossy? Jeannie, I freaking love you. Can I just tell you that right now? Freaking love you. He said, well, aren't you bossy? And I literally got up and walked out of the office and went to the car. And my mom happened to be there with me. Yes, Brenda, it's true. And she was waiting for me. And I started bawling my eyes out. And I sat and I told her, because understand that at the time I couldn't even drive. I mean, if you're not only allowed to color, let me tell you, you can't drive either. The other thing that's really hard to do is grocery shop. I don't know if you've ever noticed, but when you go in the grocery store, there is so much sensory stimulation, so many decisions that you're making, so many colors, so many sounds. There's music, there's people talking, there's people bumping into you. The grocery store is a really dangerous place for people like me. So driving is even worse. But I was called bossy and I went to the car and I cried. And I cried and I cried. And I looked at my mom and I said, I don't know what it's going to take. Now, see, I'm going to get a little emotional. I don't know what it's going to take, but now I have 2 daughters at this point. At the time I had 1. But no one will ever make my daughter feel like I feel right now. And I have to do something to change the world. And I am not kidding. At that moment in time, I decided I had to change the world. I am not talking about just right now, I got to try to figure out how to survive. You know, understand, I was still working on reading and writing at the time. But I had to change the world. Because I have 2 daughters that are going to need to navigate this world that thinks it's okay to tell someone they're bossy. And when we tell them they're bossy, they're just supposed to be quiet and sit down. What I realized in that moment is that because I was bossy, and understand that bossy to me means I had a mission, I was living with courage, and I was willing to use my voice, and I also just happened to be female. That's why I was called bossy. I wasn't hurting anyone. I wasn't being overbearing. I was fighting for what was right, and that made me bossy. And excuse my mouth, but that is bull. And I knew that I had to find a way to change that for not only me, but for everybody else too. And that's why I'm here today, making sure that as many of you as possible get to hear this mission, or get to hear the mission that I have created, which is to redefine this word of bossy. Because understand, I am never giving license to any woman being a bitch or any man being a jerk. That's not what I'm saying here. But the truth is, the word bossy isn't used like that. A woman being a bitch isn't called bossy. She's called that word. A woman using her voice is the one that is called bossy. And we should encourage that. That shouldn't be a weapon against us to quiet us. It should be a word that we get honored by. Now, somebody calls me bossy, and I'll move on to the next topic, I promise, in just a second. But you know what I say if somebody calls me bossy now? Thank you. And I keep right on leading. And guess what? My girls do too. And that's my hope for all of you. So now we're going to have a little more fun. And we're going to have a quiz. This is a true or false quiz. And all of these questions are going to be a bit interesting as we move forward. Actually, let me do this for a second too. Would anybody like to speak at this moment? I know some of this has been emotional, and if anybody has any questions, or if you'd like to speak to the story I just shared, I'd be more than open to hearing that, because I love it. So please feel free. I'll give you a second. Jeannie, did you come off mute for me?
Yes.
Talk to me, lady.
Okay. As perspective, right? How long did it take you from from that time that physician called you bossy to, your meeting with Andy till you saw some kind of success? Because I think that's really important for people to understand, right?
Yes.
It doesn't happen overnight, or even if if it's years, it can still happen. You don't give up.
That's exactly right, Jeannie. You're so right. So it took me a year and a half until I could work at all.
Wow.
A year and a half. What's really interesting about that time, and I let Andy speak to it a little bit, because what's interesting is I actually have no memory of that time whatsoever.
Wow.
It's as if it didn't exist in my world. There's I would say approximately 6 to 8 months that I have no memory of at all. I know that time happened, but it's really interesting. I look back on things and I have stuff that I wrote, and numbers and letters were backwards, and like I would put numbers into words, and it made complete sense to me, but I would give it to my mom and I'd be like, Mom, can I'd write her a note and say, can you take the trash out? And you couldn't read it. And I'd be like, why did you take the trash out, Mom? And she would be like, what do you mean, Christy? And I'd be like, I wrote you a note. She was like, Christy, I couldn't read that.
Mm.
So understand that every win, I mean, we were just getting to the point where I could learn how to remember my children's name. So there wasn't, the victories were small, but the thing is, and what you're saying, Jeannie, is really important, is that when we're in this place of hell, or we set a goal that's massive, when you set a goal to change the world, that's not going to happen tomorrow, unless, if it does for you, that's amazing. For me, that's not the case. That's something I'm going to fight for until the day that I take my last breath. And I will fight for it till the day that I take my last breath. Believe it or not, I will tell you guys this just as a side note. It's a crazy, crazy thing. But I'm actually right now running for state representative to try to make a difference in the world in that way, using my voice to help women and girls see that there's nothing we can't do, even when we've overcome adversity. So there's all different ways this can materialize, and it takes a lot of time, but every victory matters, even if it's being able to write, can you take the trash out?
Mhm.
Or, and now I'm writing books.
Yeah.
So, but that's been 5 years, over 5 years of recovery and constant work to that goal. So it's a really good question. Anybody else have anything they'd like to share or questions they'd like to ask? I'd be happy to take any and all. Yes, Andy?
Crystal, you didn't mention it, I don't think, in what you were saying, but I know one of the things you did that totally blew me away was during this time period, you went and got a master's degree. How in the hell you did that, I still don't know. But I
Yes.
know it was long days and long nights.
Oh, and lots of tears. We would have our SCORE mentor meetings, and I would some days just sit with Andy for an hour and cry. And
Wow.
he would just let me. And that's another thing that is very important as we talk about this relationship that SCORE can create, what that looks like for everybody can be really, really different. And some people may need intensive work on a business plan. And that's how you can move them forward. And others may not be there yet, but they will get there. It just depends on if they're willing to do the work. And Andy's right. I can still somewhat remember actually at that point where I came to Andy and I said, you know, I'm not getting the rehabilitation that I need. And so I think I'm going to sign up and get my master's degree. And he looked at me like, have you lost your ever loving mind? What is your problem? Because at the time I still couldn't really read well. And I certainly couldn't write well. I was trying, I was getting better, but I was nowhere near where I needed to be. And I said to him, well, win or lose, it'll see what I get the opportunity to see what I'm made of. And my big thing with him, I think if I'm remembering correctly, was I need to know that I'm worthy of somebody hiring me. I cannot go out there and market myself to organizations and tell them that I can build leaders if I don't know for sure that I'm able to do that. And this will give me the opportunity to know 100%, am I where I need to be, that I'm worthy of doing this work, or do I have a ways to go? So I ended up signing up for Messiah University's strategic leadership program, which is a very difficult program and challenging coursework with about 100 pages of scholarly reading per week. And I started out with every article or every book that I had to read, I would read one paragraph and I would write a sticky note about the paragraph. And I would put that on the paragraph. And then because I couldn't remember that paragraph before I got to the next one. So every paragraph would have a sticky note. And then I would get to the bottom of the page and I would do one sticky note that would hang off the bottom of that page that would compile all the sticky notes on that page. And then I would read the sticky notes at the bottom of the page to be able to write what my perception of that scholarly article was. And it took me days and days to get through a few pages that way. But I asked for extensions and I did what I needed to do in order to make sure that I finished it. And I will tell you all, it took me a little longer than normal, but I graduated in May with a 4.0. So yeah, anything is possible if you're willing to believe in a purpose and have the courage to go after it and be willing, understand having the courage to go after it means being willing to get knocked down.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not pretty. This is not something that's pretty, but it's something that's real. Awesome. Anybody else?
Kristal, it's Linda.
Talk to me,
So
Linda.
I have a question that might sound too sort of technical, but it's just, I'm just curious, you know, some people, and I'm sorry, you can hear a little background noise.
That's fine.
Some people, you know, they maybe draw pictures of a vision of their future, or they have a mantra that they tell each other every single day to keep them going. Or, you know, in the case of business, right? Maybe they have their mission statement for their business or a business template, a business plan. And I'm just kind of wondering, you know, what did you do to kind of, you know, in another way, either inspire yourself or keep yourself on track, you know, that like, this is that goal out there.
Okay, hold on just 1 second. You ready for this? I'm right here. I'm not leaving you, I swear. So I kept this in front of me everywhere I was and everything I did. And I'll read it to you. I know you guys can't read it, but I wrote my life purpose statement and I would keep it in front of me all the time. Now it's funny, it's actually changed a good deal, but I keep this framed because this is what walked me through hell. So it says, my life's purpose is to have fun putting some shine on it. And shine on it is in quotes. as I passionately and courageously invest in myself and others, believing in powerful safety and freedom that inspires each of us to achieve our purpose and potential. And it's signed Kristal, the Bossy Girl. And at the time, there was no such thing as Bossy Girl leadership. So what you said, Linda, is so true. And these mantras and these little reminders, because we have to find a way to stay hopeful in the darkness. This is not a world that is easy. I'm sorry. And I haven't met anybody yet who has been successful and said, that was a cakewalk. It just doesn't work that way. So we have to find those things that keep us going. And if it can be something this simple, or it can be, it could be a Post-it note on your bathroom mirror that you recite. I have those too. I have stuff like that all around my house to remind me who I really am. Because when you're getting beat up, it is difficult to remember some days. It really is. Thank you for that question, Linda. Anybody else?
Thank you.
Absolutely. There's nothing you can't ask me.
Yeah, Kristal, I'm wondering, you've talked about your mom, you've talked about your daughters. I wonder who else was in your immediate circle who helped you, who you called in for help, or who came to you to offer help?
Oh my word. That's an amazing question. And it's so funny that you say that, because I have all of these things that are in my office. I might even turn off my virtual background and show you, because Brenda, I read your note and I want you to know that I see you and I hear you and I feel you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I want to hug you right now, and I know that you are meant to be here with me. So
I feel your virtual hug. Thanks.
absolutely. I want you to email me whenever this is over. Okay.
You got it.
All right. But so what I will say to you is the people that are surrounding you are probably the most important resource that you have. Now, it doesn't have to be a lot of people. And understand, I didn't know Andy before I got hit by a truck.
Mm-hmm.
But Andy has been probably one of the top 5 people in my world that got me through this time. I believe, and everybody's beliefs are different, but my belief is that God is sure to surround us with angels that will walk us through hell. And Andy was that for me. And I'm not saying that because he's here. I'm saying that because that's true. And I'm not kidding you when I tell you, he would sit with me for a whole day. He would come to my house and bring breakfast because I couldn't drive. I didn't have anything to eat. He was an angel to me. So Andy is one of them. My mom is one of them. My daughter is one of them. I mean, my daughter had to learn how to call 911, open my phone, get my phone when I'm unconscious and call 911 to make sure I could get to the hospital. I mean, it's unbelievable what people are capable of whenever you're fighting for what needs to happen. And people come around you. The other thing, and the things that I'm looking at here in my office, I make this a place of inspiration. Make sure that your space makes you ready to fight for what your mission really is and for what your purpose really is. So when this happened to me, I had probably over 1,000 of my students that came alongside me, sent me pictures, made me books, wrote me poems, had engraved mugs and everyone was sending me, it was so crazy. Everyone was sending me Wonder Woman stuff. And they all saw me as love and light in, this place of what I saw as extreme darkness. Even, I will tell you, just as a quick story, I had no idea how I was going to pay my mortgage. And I literally thought I was going to be homeless. I was on food stamps. And and I was fighting hard, but I couldn't do what I needed to do. Not even work at McDonald's. I mean, there was no way for me to do those things. And I would go to the mailbox, and one day I went to the mailbox and I opened a letter, and it said, Kristal, you don't know me, but a few years ago, you had my wife in class, and you taught her about personality styles, and you taught her about love in action, and you saved our marriage. Here's $1,000, and I hope that you can put it to good use. And I mean, angels. And I literally felt like I got to attend my own funeral, like every day. People were telling me that what I did made a difference. And that's why I profess this message of love everywhere I go. Because if we oftentimes believe that people are out to hurt us and the world is bad, but the world is good and people are good and they want to help. And oftentimes we just don't know how to tell them that. So I have been so blessed by the people that have come around me. And it's funny, some of them I never heard from them ever again. And the letter from the guy who said I saved his marriage, to save my soul, I don't know who, I can't remember who it was. And I can't find that. But I will never, ever forget those sentiments. And I will keep trying to save people like that the best that I know how. So yeah, good question, Brenda. Anybody else? We ready for some quiz time? Let's do it. I will reshare my screen. Here we go. All right. So some of these questions you may find to be interesting. Throughout history, men have been better leaders than women. True or false? You can put it in the chat box or you can talk to me. False. Thank you, John. Give me some more. True or false? False, Lori says. Good, Lori. Brenda says false. Let me ask you. I agree with you. This answer is false. But would there be a good reason that I would have written this question and put it on this page to have a discussion about it? Why would I have done that?
In most settings that might, with a lot of men, they'd probably say true.
They'd probably say true. Good. And Brenda says too, history has documented more men as leaders, not women.
That's right.
So when you open the history books, and this is where I want to take you back to our opening exercise. One of the things that Andy shared with you is that I went back and got my master's degree, and that's true. And I wrote my thesis actually about the trends and behaviors of the most influential women in central Pennsylvania. And my research was actually quite shocking in many ways. But one of the things that it revealed is that the most successful women that I interviewed, almost none of them had mentors who were women. And I started to explore that. Because this is an interesting thing, right? What you just said, Brenda, is really important here. When you open the history books and you see leaders, you see the pictures of men's faces. You also, in your own life, many of us, guess what? I have mentors. I have 3 mentors that I would say I would walk across hot coals for. All of them are men. Why is that? What do you all think about that?
Kristal,
Why is that?
this is Linda.
Yes,
And
Linda.
I'm glad you asked that question because this is my own experience, and I, was in the corporate world for over 25 years in a variety of departments and situations. And I just have to say that as background, because in my personal history, so I loved your first exercise. When I was writing down leaders, I was writing down people that I had worked with or for. And, you know, I had one woman versus a couple of men. And it's because, in my experience, the most powerful, dramatic mentors that have helped me and changed the course of my career have been men who really, without sort of being patronizing or discriminatory, really advocated for me and other women I worked with in a very similar fashion to the way they advocated men.
Yes.
Conversely, and I hate to bring this up, but I think it's a truth that we as women need to think about. Some of the most difficult, petty, self-serving leaders that have suppressed other women that I've worked for or with have been women.
Yeah.
I just have to put that out there. And I'm not the only person that I know that feels that way. And I don't know why. I think women, we do this to ourselves. We get to be successful, and instead of lifting others up, we take on sometimes sort of the darkest sides of leadership.
Ah,
I'm with you, Linda. I've experienced it too.
Me too. Me too. And I've
Like
always tried to-
I've done it and I've received it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right.
Thank you. Thank you.
yes. Go ahead, Jeannie.
So it's interesting. And I'm so happy men are joining us, because what I heard that, and what I always wondered, do men feel the same way? Right? They've been mentored by other men, and not all mentors are good mentors, right? Not
Right.
everybody's an Andy. And so I heard other men say, yes, they share your opinion, Linda, and they've had other male mentors, right? So I always believed, and I think people get into the trap because they were mentored or because their boss leads in a certain way, that, and they see them as successful, that we need to lead in the same way. And that's just not true. Just because one leads in a different way doesn't mean it's the wrong way. And the beauty of it is that applies for both men and women. It's, you know, to your point, Kristal, it's about leadership.
It is.
Jean,
Good.
you're right on, Jean. I tell you, by the way, it's my experience that I've seen women leaders treat other women that work for them badly. And that it's not my feeling. I've seen it, right?
Right.
But that's the other thing that I really want your opinion on, Kristal, is, and I teach a leadership class at E-Town.
Yes.
And I tell the future leaders in my class, both the men and the women, but specifically to the women, don't mirror men's awful leadership styles.
Right.
You have, mostly women have maybe there's a different emotional intelligence there, and that's a good thing, you know. And you got to be yourself. You can't be someone else, and don't mimic terrible men leaders, because there are a bunch of terrible men leaders.
Yeah.
John, it's beautiful what you're saying. And it's so interesting because the man who actually mentored me to be able to do what I do, my subject matter expert really in my world, his name is John also. And it's so interesting because he is so opposite from me, left-brained thinker, just suffers deeply from analysis paralysis, kind of cold, not really a people person, brilliant, willing, as humble as you could possibly be, willing to put people before him every single time. But the thing is, he hired me and he mentored me because he understood that I had what he didn't, and vice versa.
That's right.
And right. And but what happened, let me tell you what happened. When I started working with him, guess what? The first thing I saw how he could facilitate a group. I saw how he was more effective than anybody else I had ever seen do this kind of thing where you're talking about leadership and teaching classes. He was amazing. So what's the first thing you think I probably tried to do?
You didn't try to change him, did you?
No, no.
Did you try to be more like him?
Be more like him.
That's it.
Oh,
I had to be like him. If I wanted to
Oh.
be good, I had to be like him. How do y'all think that worked out for me?
Not well.
no.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
I bombed every
Yeah.
time. And I even got to the point where I would write down every word he said. Now, and this was before my car accident, so I could memorize it. And I would deliver it just the exact same way he did. And people hated it. Hated it. Because it wasn't authentic. People
Right,
know
exactly.
like that.
Exactly.
In a heartbeat. They know. And so you're so right. You have to come to the table with who you are. And you can't mimic what other people do. What, again, research shows, and this is sad, but it's true. Research shows that we will lead the way that we have been led, even if it sucks, even if we hated it, even if we quit that job because we hated working for them, then we still do it.
Yep.
Go, were you going to say something, John?
Well, yeah, because when I worked for a micromanager, guess what I was?
That's it.
Yeah.
I had to be, because he was a micromanager and I had to be one. And then you find out as you get older, what the hell? This is not what when I wasn't happy, I changed jobs.
That's right. Yes. And even when you change jobs, probably, John, it took you a good amount of time
Of course.
to get out of those practices and
Of course.
behaviors and be able to lead in a way that was authentic to you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we all struggle with this. So, and getting back to even what we see here on the screen and some of the things that you guys have said to me already, I am so honored that you're willing to share so deeply, because this is the truth. Everything that Linda just said, everything that Jeannie just said, everything that John just said, this is the truth. We got to come from a place of being real. And women are oftentimes women's worst enemies. That is not okay. And we have to get to a place, and honestly, I believe not just this, but things like the word bossy, or things like what you're saying, John, where we have to be able to figure out, how do we use our emotional intelligence, but still be respected? And women trying to figure out this balance oftentimes don't have somebody to look to who has done it well. There are men who can go find other men that think like them, right? And kind of use that as a guide to figure their way through this. Now, let me be very clear about this. And I have spent so much time researching this, because honestly, I had to learn everything twice. But what I will say, and no matter which way you look at it, leadership skills, in my opinion, are leadership skills. The way I lead is not different from the way that Linda should lead, or the way that John should lead, or the way that Andy should lead. The difference, and the reason we have to have these real conversations about gender, are not because the leadership skills are different. But what's different is what we're touching on here. It's the nuances. And the problem is that oftentimes women are not effectively leading in the workplace until they're in their 30s, mid to late 30s, or early 40s, because of these things that they need to overcome. They're learning how to balance their emotional intelligence with their willingness to achieve a mission. And they don't want to be called bossy. They don't want to be seen as a bitch, but they don't want to be not respected. So if they're too soft, that doesn't work, and they get shut down. If they're too loud, they get called names like bossy, and they shut down. And all of this lengthens the time period of when they actually can effectively lead. So this is what my mission is, and what I'm fighting against is we have to get to the point where we can all have these conversations, men and women together, and say, how do we fix this? Because if our women, and I am a little bit biased, But I believe the emotional intelligence that oftentimes that is brought to the table is incredibly effective when you talk about those adjectives that we listed at the beginning of the session. So oftentimes women naturally can be incredibly effective leaders without putting as much effort in necessarily as maybe others might have to. But we don't know how. And we don't know how to do that. Instead, we go like I did and see somebody who's completely different, who has none of the same strengths, and we try to be like them. And oftentimes those people are men. They don't have to be, but most of the time they are, right? Very rarely will you see people that are doing what I do, especially when I started doing it almost 20 years ago. Almost everybody who did what I did was a male over the age of 60. And then there was me. And it was just an interesting thing because there wasn't really anyone for me to look up to. What I learned in my research, let me say, there weren't females in my industry that I could find. That's the better way to say it. What I can say about that is, as I've learned, and when I went through my thesis and the things that I've researched, is what I've recognized is oftentimes it's not even a career issue. Women in business who are leading oftentimes have children, or they have parents, and they have a situation where they're in the middle, they're trying to lead in their careers, and life is pushing on them from both sides. Because women aren't often leading until they're in their late 30s, early 40s. They have aging parents, they have children, and everything is being pushed on both sides. And they just don't have the ability to take on mentees. Not at that point. And the more I researched it, the more I saw it was life getting in the way of women being able to work with other women than it really was a preference. Even now, I can tell you, I need right now today is when I need to be mentoring young women. I need to. I can't.
Right.
I'm a single mom. I'm running for state representative. I'm running a business. My dad has cancer. My kids have needs. I can't. Right? And it's not for a lack of wanting to. And what you all said, and Linda, your point is very well taken. Biologically, as women, and with what we've seen in society, we can oftentimes believe there's only room for one of us. There's only room for one. I made it here. I scratched, I clawed my way here, and I'm not giving it to you. You better work your ass off just like I did. Right? And oftentimes that gets in our way too. Let's be really honest about that. And that's something that we are going to have to overcome together. So yes, the scarcity mentality can be so dangerous. It's so true. And Brenda, unfortunately, we've seen that as we've risen to positions of leadership. There aren't many of us, right? Still to this day.
It was scarcity that made me hold other women back. And once I learned that it was scarcity, and scarcity is a myth, that there's enough to go around, there's enough success to go around, and we can create more success for each other. Once I learned that, it was a breakthrough for me.
It's so true. And see, only by having these real conversations where we put it on the table and talk about it being true, can we make inroads to that, Brenda? Because everybody, you won't believe the number of people when we have these sessions that want to say at first, that's not true. Everything's fine. Women love other women. Everything's good. And I'm like, come on, let's actually talk about what's real, right? You're so right, Brenda. This is beautiful. And this scarcity, and the truth is right now, in the top C-suite positions, in the top 500 companies in the world, only 6% of those positions are held by women. So we still are looking at a situation where we believe there's scarcity, but in all actuality, I think things are shifting, and the people who make the decisions understand the power that women bring to the table. But we have to be willing to step up. So we all need to make steps in that direction. All right. So what I'm realizing right now is we have 11 minutes. And I could do this with you all for at least another 3 hours. And believe me, we would have a fantastic time. But what I want to do is I want to give you some application questions before we end our time together. And John, thank you for your message. You are amazing and you made my day. Your smile was great and your feedback was even better. So thank you. I'm going to forward through some of these questions. And actually, I'll tell you what, I'll let you read them as I forward through them because I think you might find them interesting. We aren't going to have massive discussions about them. Can I just ask you all on this one real fast? What are your thoughts? Courageous women understand that fear is the enemy, true or false?
I'm going to say false. Fear is a stimulus in our environment.
Good.
Our response to it is the enemy or the ally.
Good, Brenda. Any other thoughts or feelings?
Okay, Kristal, it's me again.
I love it, Jeannie. Bring it.
All right, I would have to say yes to that. And honestly, I think this is a personal question, really, because everybody has to understand what's holding them back. And most of the time it's fear of failure, fear of looking, how people are going to view them, especially as a woman. Wow, if I speak up, I'm going to be labeled as a bossy girl, right?
Yes, yes.
Or I'm not a team player, or I don't understand, I'm emotional, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And I think it's a human, it's not only for women. I know we're talking about women, but it's also, again, John, like it's for men too. It's like everybody has fear, right? And it's just a matter of pushing through that fear and actually using that fear as a catalyst.
Motivator. Fear is a motivator.
Right.
But I would say, I love what Jeannie is saying because, you know, as we started this SCORE Professional Women's Network, we went and talked to, you know, clients and people that weren't clients. And, you know, we got a variety of answers about what their interests were and what their needs were. But there was a theme when we did, you know, I did an affinity diagram and boy, fear came up. Fear came up as you know, I'm afraid to talk to a bank, or I'm afraid of failure. And so there was like, again, the sort of technical skill, business skill side, and then there was the motivation and the emotional side. And that is one of the things we're trying to do with the PWN, the SCORE PWN, is to talk about this emotional side, because the women we talked to, the women clients, identified that. So, you know, I love what Jeannie is saying, and our little bit of research, you know, showed this.
And Kristal, to your point about leadership qualities.
Yes.
If you're a leader who is not in tune with your own fears, you will not be in tune with the people who work for you for their fears. Because as a leader,
amen,
you need to coach them through that. You need to recognize them, get them to have that success underneath their belt, and then watch them flourish. I mean, there's nothing better than, right, to coach somebody through something like that and then see them be successful.
yes.
But you got to be in tune with that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good. And I love having this discussion. What you guys are saying is so important, because this fear, and when you're talking about the research that you did, Linda, This fear, that is what's getting in the way of women actually being willing to lead. Now,
100%.
depending on how you frame it, and Jeannie, you just did this perfectly. Depending on how you frame it, because understand, if you really think about it, courage is impossible. There is no such thing as courage if we don't have fear. Fear is actually our friend. For me, I know when I start to get fearful. So I'll just give the example that I have of right now, I'm running for state rep. I'm not a politician, never dreamed of doing it. And I just literally felt like I had to do the right thing for our world, but I was terrified because it's not my world. I know very little about it. The only thing I know is leadership. And I believe that we need people that know and understand leadership in these positions, right? That's all I know. And I was extremely fearful. But what I realized in that place of fear is that if I was fearful, it meant that I had an opportunity to make a difference, win or lose. Win or lose, I was going to be able to use my voice and to help more women be willing to step up and do things even when they're scared. So oftentimes having fear is about being willing to go first, being willing to have the courage and to show other women that it can be done.
Right.
So depending on how you look at this, it can be true and it can be false, right? Good. Okay. You can see I love you guys and we could talk about a lot of things here. We have 5 minutes. So right? I love watching your faces as you read those. This is the only one, and I will tell you, we won't go deeply into this. But if you think back on the people that you wrote on your list at the very beginning of this session, I guarantee you that they loved you. And when I'm talking about love, this is the only question in this whole entire group of questions that has one absolute right answer. And the right answer to this is true. As a woman in leadership, you must love all of your followers relentlessly and understand, I don't care if you like them. This is not an emotional thing. I don't care if you like them, but you must love them because you signed up. You raised your hand. You're the leader. You must love them. And love is an action. Love is not an emotion. This is the only one that has an absolute right answer. So when we're talking about overcoming adversity, I want you to think about, and if you would, I want you to write these questions down for yourself. Because at the end, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you my email address. And I will also, I'm going to put Andy on the line. I'll let him put his email address on the chat box here. I'd love for you to share your answers to these questions. What is your mission? And when I ask you, what is your mission? I'm not asking you what's SCORE's mission. I'm not asking you what's the mission of Highmark. I'm not asking you what's the mission of whatever, fill in the blank of wherever you work or are associated with. I'm asking, what's your mission? I'll tell you what mine is. My mission is to redefine the word bossy so that women are no longer having that word against them and are no longer afraid to use their voice. That's my mission. And everything I do, I ask myself, will this further that mission? What's yours? How do you allow gender to impede or support mission accomplishment? It's an interesting question to think about. Name 2 things that are blocking your path to success. We all have them. What are yours? Write them down. If failure was impossible, what steps would you take toward your mission? Think about that for a minute. It's so easy to say, well, that can't be done. I'll tell you, when I met Andy 5 years ago, you know what I told him? I want to be a national speaker and I want to do a TED Talk.
Well,
And I couldn't read and write. But the question for me was, if failure was impossible, what steps would I take? And I'm asking you, if failure was impossible, what steps would you take? Good. Now, I want you to write down one thing you can do differently in the next 24 hours. And let me see how much time we have. We have 1 minute. And I put my email address at the bottom. Andy, I'd like you to put your email address and what I'd like you to do in the chat box. And what I'd like you to do is either email me and let me know your answers to these questions, or you can share them with Andy, but you have to share them with somebody in the next 24 hours, or I promise you that the last hour and a half was a complete waste of time. And you don't want that. So find who you're going to share this with. And I have 1 minute, and I'd like to ask, is there anybody who can share what's one thing that you'd like to do differently, or if you'd like to give me any feedback for the day of what impact this had on you? I'd be happy to hear any of those things. The floor is yours for just a few minutes, or one, whatever, you know. We'll be a couple minutes over. It won't hurt anybody. One thing that you'd like to say out loud to the world that you are going to do differently, or if there's any feedback you'd like to share with me about the conversation that we had today. Thank you, Suzanne. I'm honored to share it with you. Are you all waiting out the clock? I've been known to do that too. We are over time, so I won't push you. But what I will ask, hold on, I'm going to stop sharing for just a moment. So I can see all of you.
nice.
That's better, right?
Mhm.
I'd just like to say to all of you, thank you so much for being here with me today. I truly am blessed by our time together, and I thank you for your sharing and your honesty. It's difficult to be authentic about these kinds of topics. This is not easy stuff. So I appreciate everything that you did today. I look forward to having this time with you again, possibly in the future. And I really, really appreciate you. Anybody else have anything they'd like to share?
Okay.
I think we're good to go. Jeannie.
All righty, Kristal, thank you so much. It's always nice when, you know, you start your day in a normal kind of fashion and something happens during the day that changes not only your day, but your outlook, and reaffirms many things and gives you the courage then to go on to whatever it is in your life that you're doing today. And your story and your leadership qualities and what you teach have certainly done that, you know, for me, but also I'm sure for the entire audience. And there's two things, some takeaways. Please complete the questions that Kristal gave you today. If you do any one thing and do it for yourself, complete them today, because it will set you up for success. Kristal, your leadership qualities, I think we walk away, and something that, we try to do with the SCORE Professional Women's Network. And what to me was so important today, because it was very inclusive, right? it was very inclusive, and we could have some really hard conversations about women and women in leadership. And I think it all kind of boils down to, being authentic, and you certainly emulate that. And that's what comes across, right? Is that as being authentic and being articulate, what that creates is trust. And that's what people want, is a leader that they trust. So you emulate that. And I think that's what some of the teachings that we have learned today, which I thank you for very much. And
Thank you.
I know, and I can't wait to see you on TED Talk. I can't wait, because I know you're going to be there. I absolutely know you're going to be there.
That's my 2022 goal. Now my candidacy is getting this a little messed up. So it might be 2023, but it's going to happen.
It will happen. It absolutely will happen, girl. It definitely will happen. So Andy is gonna put up a poll. If the audience that is left, please take our poll. It's feedback that we need. Also in the chat, if there's other subjects, please just put them in the chat, and so that we can entertain having other subjects. I know, Kristal, you'll be back. Without a doubt, you'll be back.
Absolutely.
We'll be back. And also for those who, this was all very unscripted. I hope everybody understands that what we were talking about as far as being mentors and SCORE was very fluid, very dynamic, totally unscripted, right, Kristal?
Oh, I had no intention of discussing.
I know, it just
whatsoever.
kind of happened. But, and then one last thing is, damn, Andy, I thought you were just a pretty face. I never had any idea of the story, of the depth of the story between you and Kristal. So thanks for sharing that, because Andy is very quiet about a lot of that.
That's
But,
my angel right there. Be good to him.
yeah, he really is. So let's see.
I'm gonna cry.
Yeah, no,
I do that a lot.
That's all right. That's all right. It's
Crying
good
is all right.
That's right.
Just like fear.
Great.
Crying is just a thing.
Grateful tears.
Yeah. So Andy, how are we doing on our poll? And
So-
thanks for hanging in there.
We need to be made attendees again to be able to vote in the poll. Host and panelists are allowed to vote.
Oh, great. Thank you. Let's see if we can do that.
And don't forget to put in some other subjects, and so that we can have new events. But this was great. And also a lot of things that you talked about, I was taking notes, are that you did the self-advocate, women especially, be your own self-advocate, right?
Oh.
Not only in business, but you did it in the medical field as well, for your health.
Yes.
There's no shame in that. There's no, who cares if they call you at the end of the day at a Bossy girl?
Well,
Who's listening now, right? So
that's it.
and that's what it takes to run your own business, right? To be your self-advocate, have your support system, don't give up, have that courage. And, we tout this a lot, is have that mission statement, put it up on the wall, right?
Yes. Well, and Jeannie, what you're saying is so powerful, because I think that oftentimes we think that these lessons are like, oh, well, you had a traumatic brain injury, but that doesn't apply to me.
Right.
But the thing is, building a business is exactly the same thing. There are going to be people that call you names. There are going to be people that tell you you can't. There are going to be people that don't believe in you or put you down, right?
That's
But
right.
we have to find our courage, and we have to find our purpose.
Yeah.
And that will carry us through.
Yes, absolutely.
Andy, I think all of our attendees are gone now. So I think we could, no, maybe not.
They're taking, I think you just can't
Recording.
see
Are
them
they
anymore
recording?
like it was
Okay.
at the beginning.
All right. Otherwise, I was going to say we can stop recording, but if they're still there, perfect.
I know Brenda's saying, still here?
Yeah.
They just had to go take the poll.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now that I went into the chat, I can't find the poll again.
Oh.
Yeah, it might be here somewhere. Here, let's check.
Can you click on the polls button at the bottom?
Maybe. Yeah, so attendees don't see the polls button.
Yeah, I'm having trouble getting everybody back to
So the poll's gone.
attendees for the
Is
poll.
there a way to simply send an email?
Great, why don't you guys just
yeah.
send that out as
Yeah.
an email to the participants?
Thank you. I do need to get going, but thanks so much.
Oh,
Thanks
it
for
was,
Thanks
joining.
to SCORE, thanks to Kristal. This was, I was telling Kristal in a private message, I have been having health problems and haven't been able to get out of bed lately. And running a 3-year-old business is, you know the stress of this. So I very nearly skipped. I thought I would just catch the recording, but like Kristal said, I was meant to be here in person,
Yeah. very
and I'm
good.
so grateful.
you,
Yeah.
And I need to
Yeah.
call SCORE again, and I need unfortunately, I'm one of those people who needs a new mentor. But
Get
it's all
one.
right. My
That's
current
right.
mentor has brought me this far, and my next phase, I'll get another one.
That's right.
Yes, absolutely. And it's important, it's good that you understand that.
I want my SCORE chapter to understand that better. So we'll see. Hopefully I can help them get there.
Well, Brenda, I loved our time together, and email me, we'll talk more.
Okay, any
Drop that
final
in the chat.
words?
Sorry, Brenda, are you still there?
Yeah, I need Kristal's email address, please.
Oh, you got it. I'll put it right there, right now. Oh, well, hold on. That didn't go. There we go. There we go.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much. I appreciate you guys so much. I guess it's time to log off. I'm going to miss you already.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks for
Goodbye.
everything today.
Everything
I'm
was
gonna
super,
stop-
Chris.